guys, we are back for another Dokkan battle video. So we're continuing the Red Zone No Item Challenge. We're doing it with one of the hardest teams, and that is Raditz's team. Now, for sure, right? Raditz has two leader skills, one being Pure Saiyans, the other being Saiyan Saga. Pure Saiyans is one of the strongest categories in the game. Without thinking about it too deeply, I would just probably say it's the third strongest category in the game by itself. I think maybe Movie Heroes is one, and Bond of Parent and Child is probably two, but, you know, I'm not thinking too deeply, just off the top of my head, right? Now, that is true, right? We have one of the strongest teams available that gets buffed every 5 seconds, right? I mean, DOKKANFEST Kid Goku right here just came out in October. But here's the thing. Raditz is the worst unit Dokkan has ever released. This is a DOKKANFEST exclusive character. This is a character that Dokkan is selling and wants people to, you know, summon, not pull, buy stones, summon, right? And Raditz is, like, far and away the worst of these characters ever. So it's like all of these fights, starting with probably, like, the cooler fight. Actually, I guess no, even Lord Slug could be a little challenging, I guess, depending upon how things go with Raditz. Raditz is dead weight in almost all these fights. Raditz has an active skill that sometimes can be useful, but it does like no damage. It hits like a wet noodle, right? Raditz doesn't really have a lot of positive things to say about him, unfortunately, throughout like this entire run. It's just a matter of hope he doesn't get super attacked, hope too many attacks are not aimed his way, hope we can get lucky enough that he gets key, right? Because he does need the super attack to get extra defense. Oftentimes, it can just be very tricky. Now, this opening fight against Turles is a joke. Don't even really need to talk too much about this, right? Even Raditz is too strong for Turles in here. Alright, now moving on to the second fight against Lord Slug. I do think that Lord Slug potentially could be an issue for us, right? Because Lord Slug, remember that his final phase, he is actually going to be STR, right? Which means he's going to have type advantage against Raditz. And of course, you know, because in many of these runs, I just see no reason not to bring him. We're using the DOKKANFEST Kid Goku, Rainbow Orb changing, giving damage reduction support to the rotation. It's just very difficult, I've found, to keep him off the team, that Kid Goku. It's just very difficult to not run him. He's too goddamn good, right? Now, again, Lord Slug doesn't really have crazy gimmicks, though. It's just, you know, hope that Raditz doesn't get caught, I guess. Maybe a lot of these fights go that way, right? Where it's like, all right, we're going to do this, this, and this, and we just pray that Raditz does not get turned into a jigsaw puzzle piece, right? That's about it. You know, we're able to use many of the DOKKANFEST LRs that have come out this year on these teams, right? We got LR Goku and Vegeta, and then we got LR Goku and Vegeta on rotation, right? Who are able to really handle business. You know, again, the pure Saiyan category is pretty much as good as it gets. So even though Raditz is terrible, at least, you know, he's got a really good team that he's leading. All right, now we are going up against Cooler. Remember that there are now two fights from this Cooler movie that actually, you know, there's two fights against this same Cooler from the same movie, right? The Wicked Bloodline Red Zone has one, and then, of course, the movie Red Zone has the first stage. Now, the two Cooler phases, I think, could both be an issue for Raditz. The first Cooler that we fight, of course, is STR, which means he's going to have a type advantage over Raditz, which is very, very scary. Any STR phases in this run, in this entire challenge, are pretty much just instant death, right? So we do have to be very, very, very cautious around those types of characters. But, again, Raditz, you know, it's just, you know, hope he doesn't get caught with super attacks. Let the gods... Let, you know, Carnival LR Goku, Goku and Vegeta, any of the Brolys, Vegetas, any of these characters that we bring, you know, let them sort of handle business and we should be good. Cooler, you know, he can hit hard with his super attack in that final phase in this fight, but it's just, this fight is not what it wants. Like when this fight first came out, like, it was like, okay, a little tricky, but one thing I would like to keep people to keep in mind, right? you could say, like, oh, Raditz is so bad, it's, you know, the Pure Saiyans featuring Raditz or something like that. But keep in mind, all of these runs with new teams, like, you have it filled up with characters that released in 2022. All characters designed to be able to combat these red zone stages. So the red zone is just way easier to handle because you just have way more competent options in these stages, right? Not many characters from 2021 or beyond or before are really that decent in a lot of the red zone fights, right? So it's like, as the year has gone on and we have more and more options who can just sort of, you know, come in here and cut these bosses up, right? So there we go. There's the cooler fight. Again, just make sure that Raditz does not get caught against this phase right here. Make sure, you know, we can, you know, just have a unit that could guard or, you know, defend well in front of Cooler, super attack the final form Cooler in case he gets it off. But really, really not too bad. Alright, now we're moving on to the Android 13 fight. Remember that Android 13 is really not that tricky at all. The design, I always say this, but they failed this guy's design, right? Android 13 just being, you know, this opening phase against an STR and physical enemy, these guys aren't really too tough. That 3 dodge right there for Kale and Khalifa, that did save a lot. It does save a lot of damage. Remember, Kale and Khalifa can be very good, but they have to build into it. They start out just so dreadfully bad, right? Now, in this fight, once we reach Android 13, we have 2 consecutive phases of an AGL boss. So it's just, dude, 2 AGL bosses in a row means we just line up the entire team with tech units, right? And not only is it 2 AGL bosses in a row, but we also don't have to deal with an int boss, which is really, really good. This is actually a pretty bad rotation. Remember that tech Easy God Goku? He can work very effectively, right, in many of these movie red zone fights, because, you know, once the movie boss shows up, he's got the damage reduction. But early on in some of these fights, he can get cooked. Tech God Goku could get blasted in this fight, right? He could get blasted in, like, the first phase of the AGL Metal Cooler fight in the Wicked Bloodline red zone, right? So, like, this phase right here is actually very scary. We could easily get just crunched in this phase, but once we reach AGL Android 13, at that point, it's really not too bad. Only 77k right there. Yeah, it's not that bad, but once we reach Android 13, we're running nearly a full tech team. So just provided Android 13 doesn't super attack like in slot 3 and catch our floating Raditz, we're fine. We're completely good to go. I still maintain that this fight, I think the second phase of Android 13 probably should have been int, and that would have made this a much more formidable fight, right? Or at least, if not int, at the very least, not double AGL, I think would have been very good to make this fight a little bit more competitive with, you know, a lot of the... Because, I mean, dude, Stage 4 for the movie side is Android 13. Stage 4 for the GT side is Baby. Baby is way harder than Android 13. It's not even close. Alright guys, now we're moving on to the Bojack fight. Now, Bojack is hard. This was a really tough fight, actually. Because Bojack, just in that last phase, the sealing and locking, it is just very deadly with Raditz. Two Raditzes floating around. So let's go over a lot of the team, right? Carnival Goku, of course, the MVP. You know, if you could bring him, you bring him, right? Stacking, guarding, reviving, the boy is just way too goddamn good, right? We, of course, have the double Raditzes because we're forced to. We got Tech God Goku, who, of course, is incredible defensively against the movie boss's enemies. Tech God Goku could get absolutely undressed by, you know, the Beto squad right here. But provided he doesn't get crushed in this opening phase, Tech God Goku really can be quite impressive in this fight, right? So then after that, we have the LR Gods. We know exactly why the LR Gods are here. They're very good, very versatile. You know, typically they've got their dodges, they got their guard at the start, right? Like, it's just very easy to use them, and they work so well with Tech God Goku. Makes them just a very strong combo, right? And they could be very effective here against Bojack. Now then, the last two options on the team, remember, we want int characters here. Now, I chose to go with Majin Vegeta and the int legendary Super Saiyan Broly. Now, Majin Vegeta easily could have backfired on me, right? Because we don't have a Trunks on the team. Remember that, I think Majin Vegeta is very good. I think he's aging good. I think things went well for him. But one of the reasons I think things turned around for Majin Vegeta, and he's now looked much more favorably at this point than he was at the start of the year when he came out, is because of the fact that, again, the best unit in the game is currently a Trunks character, which Vegeta needs for, you know, his extra damage reduction. And that is where the issues with his design can come in, is that we don't have the capability of bringing a Trunks character unless we're going to bring the Exchange Vegeta and Trunks unit from 3 years ago, which is ass, and we're just not bringing, right? So we go in, and it's just, you know, make sure we have really good luck once we get to the last phase of Bojack. With Bojack, you know, sealing and locking every single rotation, it just really can be very, very difficult to work through, man. It's a pretty tough fight. Bojack is just hard. The one good thing, though, is that I have had so many countless runs ended by int Bojack. The second phase, int Bojack does hit pretty hard. He's pretty tough as well. But at the very least, Raditz, our weakest character, he has type advantage against int Bojack. So we don't have to worry about Raditz selling for us against int Bojack. It's just against tech Bojack that we have to be very, very careful about. And again, it's not... this is one of those fights, it's just like the Broly fight, in that a lot of times it could be taken out of your hands, right? Like, Bojack could lock Raditz in slot 2 and then super slot 2, and there's just, outside of 3 dodging it, like, there's nothing we could do about that, right? That's kind of this Bojack fight. Very similar to Broly, right? You can't dodge, and then he just hits you with the AoE, right? And many runs, almost any team, like, AoE Broly supers slot 1, turn 1, first turn, and you're probably not winning, right? Unless you're using items against that AoE Broly, right? You need a little bit of luck to go your way with where the enemy's attacks and, you know, how their seals, locks, those types of abilities might work, right? But we're able to get through the Bojack fight. Look at this. We're not going to get to Bojack until turn 7. I feel like that is probably very good. That it takes us so long to get to Bojack, allows us to build up, you know, Legendary Super Saiyan Broly able to stack up. The gods were able to stack up a lot before transforming. That's just a huge advantage for us, right? Being able to stack up a lot of these characters first. Alright guys, now we're moving on to the Janemba fight. Now Janemba can certainly be tough. At the end of this fight, physical Janemba just hits very, very hard, right? Physical Janemba, he is one of the million damage super attack bosses. Here, let me just quickly double check. How much damage does physical super Janemba do? Physical super Janemba, yeah, he does 1,050,000 is the damage he does. So physical Janemba is one of the 1,000,000 damage super attack bosses that we do have to deal with. This fight can be a bit tricky because Janemba occasionally can hit pretty hard this opening turn. And of course, Raditz is, you know, pretty much a sitting duck in a lot of portions of this fight. But keep in mind that the second phase, I mean, this Janemba fight does resemble, this is kind of like a weaker version of what the Wicked Bloodline fights a lot of times look like. Like, Int Final Form Cooler is basically just like a stronger version of this fight, right? Like, it's like, Int Final Form Cooler, he doesn't really have gimmicks and stuff like that. He just hits hard, basically. And that's kind of what happens here with this Janemba. But Janemba just hits way less hard than some of those Wicked Bloodline bosses, right? So the point here, I guess, is to try and get Tech Gogeta to get the Scouter up. The thing about Tech Gogeta in many of these no-item runs, the Scouter really can win us the day, but it oftentimes can be tricky even getting the Scouter off in the first place. It's not guaranteed, right? You know, being able to be above 70% HP on turn 7 or turn 4 or later is not always guaranteed. Even if Carnival Goku revives and resets for us, we only heal with, what, 50, is it 58 or 59% HP? But not quite enough for the Tech Gogeta to be able to transform for us. I use EZA STR Namek Goku in here. I really, really like using Namek Goku and STR Ultimate Gohan in fights where they have type advantage. I know, you know, the strength of a character like Namek Goku or Ultimate Gohan is the fact that they could potentially go type neutral with their guards. But remember that both Namek Goku and Ultimate Gohan, because when they guard, they have a multiple turn long lasting guard. It means that when they get hit by that physical type enemy, their guard procs for several turns, right? And then Ultimate Gohan and Namek Goku are also, they have extra, like, you know, crit and additional type abilities and stuff like that for when they actually do get that guard up, which can be very helpful. So far, I could see why this became our winning run. I mean, this was a very clean RNG. In terms of losses, I think Bojack took me several tries. Bojack probably took at least like 6 tries or so. It's just a tough fight, right? Like, Raditz is just like not meant to go up against these higher level red zone bosses. The whole point, like, the whole video, we're just hiding him, right? So like that is something to keep in mind. Broly, of course, it took. Actually, I think I got pretty lucky on with Broly. I think Bojack took more tries than Broly did. And I think Janemba took a few tries as well, but getting that Scouter up early against a fight like this, it just really, you know, allows you to be way more effective, right? Carnival Goku able to, you know, sort of carry on through the fight and really build up, and then we just start to look really, really good, right, and finish this fight off. So there's the Janemba fight, right? You know, he doesn't have a ton of gimmicks, he just hits hard. We just make sure we don't get caught by him hitting hard, and we're good to go. Alright, guys, so we are on to the hardest fight. Was this... I feel like this is the scariest red zone fight for this Raditz team, for sure, but I definitely had more struggles with some of the other fights, including the Wicked Bloodline fights, but again, this was a pretty good luck run. AGL Broly at any point could insta-kill Raditz, right? Yeah, no shit. But it's just... AoE Broly, right, is an STR boss that does 800,000 damage. It's just, we just have to get super lucky to get through AoE Broly. It's essentially what has to happen, right? Like, I was thinking I would, maybe have to revive with Carnival Goku or something like that. But we're able, I remember what happens very clearly here. The first turn against AoE Broly, he does not super attack. And then the second turn, AoE Broly does super, but it's not right away. So we're able to outright kill him before he even gets his AoE off, right? And then, we're able to just sort of, work our way from there, right? Like, once we get through AoE Broly, it's, even though AGL Broly is one of the most devastating bosses in the game, double supers, doing 1.2 million damage, per super attack, canceling dodge, which is, I think, this is the strongest thing a boss can do. But the AoE phase is just so unfair because it's an AoE super attack and you can't dodge it. Dodging is, the strongest defensive mechanic you have available to you. If you can't do that, it just limits, I think, so much strategy with a lot of these characters, right? I feel like a lot of these characters, giving them dodge can help shore up, some of their weaknesses and stuff like that. And of course, this Broly fight, it just does not work in here, right? Cell Max just hits way too hard. Like, I'm tempted to say Broly is a harder fight than Cell Max with, the extra category bonuses they gave the Cell Max fight, but Cell Max just hits so much harder than Broly, right? It's just so hard to keep up with Cell Max's damage, but at least you can dodge against Cell Max. It's close. I would side on saying Cell Max is harder, because he just hits so much harder. But, I mean, this Broly fight really is no joke, right? So, there we go. We got the movie Red Zone no items with Raditz, DOKKANFEST Raditz. If Raditz can do it, do these Red Zone no item challenges, every team can do it, right? Because Raditz is just, I mean, what do I want to say? He's dreadfully bad, he's horribly bad, he's pitifully bad. Raditz is just ass, we know this, right? All of these runs is just about praying the enemy just doesn't attack Raditz, right? You could mentally project a Cyberman in the spot over Raditz, and you have basically a good idea. You have a good idea of what's going on with these fights, right? Imagine a little itty-bitty Cyberman right there. And that's essentially how I'm sort of thinking about it as we're going through. I guess the one good thing with Raditz, though, is that he is a villain character, which means he takes less damage from these villain bosses in these red zone fights, right? Remember that super class units take extra damage from villain bosses, and then your villain characters will take extra damage from super class bosses. But right now, all of the really tough fights are villains, which means some of these villain characters can tank a little bit better. So we'll see if that might factor in maybe with the 8th anniversary, maybe with new red zones or something like that. We will see, right? Let me know what you guys think of DOKKANFEST Raditz and his team no-iteming the entire movie Red Zone. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.